Is drinking raw milk safe like RFK Jr. suggests? Can you reduce a glucose spike if you eat your food in, quote unquote, the right order? I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp. I host a nutrition myth-busting podcast called Bite Back with Abby Sharp. And those are just some of the questions I tackle with qualified experts on my show. There is so much food misinformation and disinformation out there, and it can feel impossible to know what's real and what's BS. On Bite Back, my goal is to help listeners create a pleasurable relationship with food, their body, and themselves, which in my opinion is the fundamental secret to good health. Listen to Bite Back wherever you get your podcasts.
Wouldn't it be nice if we were older, then we wouldn't have to wait so long? And wouldn't it be nice to live together in the kind of world where we belong? No one's gonna make it that much better when we can say goodnight and stay together. Wouldn't it be nice if we could wake up in the morning when the day is new? After having spent the day together, hold each other close the whole night through. What happy times together we've been spending. I wish that every kiss was never ending. Oh, wouldn't it be nice?
Well, no, as a matter of fact, genius is not too strong a word to describe the late, great Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. Passed away yesterday at the age of 82, as we learned. And I got a number of emails yesterday with suggestions of songs to use to start the show. I decided I would choose a song from Pet Sounds. That, of course, Wouldn't It Be Nice? Pet Sounds, the album from 1966 that contained so much sound, so many different instruments that fellow bandmate and singer Mike Wilson said to Brian Wilson, who's going to listen to this bleep? I mean, is it only going to be picked up, all these different sounds, by a dog's ear? Which is what led to the title of the album, Pet Sounds. So influential was Pet Sounds that Paul McCartney and the Beatles decided they needed to do something like that too. And along came Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I mean, I could go on and on about the genius that was Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys, but I'll leave it at that. I went home yesterday, and while I was mowing the lawn, I put Pet Sounds onto the old headphones and listened in to some classic Brian Wilson. And from one Brian to another, our musicologist friend, Brian Allison, who joins us every Monday morning at 11 for This Week in Music History. Why not welcome him to the show early this morning? Hey, Brian.
Well, you knew I had to chime in on this.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you are.
I couldn't have said it any better than you did in your introduction, Mike. Brian Wilson was just so influential. And I think, some of the Beach Boys' early music, the surf type of music that they did, probably for some put them in a certain category. But really, Pet Sounds changed that completely. I mean, it was just an album for the ages, and it influenced everybody. And as you so rightly pointed out, I mean, when you've got Paul McCartney and John Lennon looking at your record going, yeah, we got to up our game here, guys.
Exactly.
That's pretty impressive work. So, it's just a really sad loss. I feel the weight of the world today because I think we just lost somebody that was so meaningful to so many people.
No, I think you're right, Brian. And how fortunate were we as people to have experienced what Brian Wilson, the genius that he offered. The music, I like what you said about categorizing it, because back in the day, that was the big debate. Is it rock? Is it pop? And as you know, I lean, towards a heavier rock from the 1970s, Rush being my favorite band, et cetera. But you have to, I think, consider the time. I would call this rock of the time. Maybe today that's changed, but the sheer power of the music and the experimentation put into it, just incredible stuff.
100%. And that led way to groups like Rush, because the groups like the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson and the Beatles were willing to be experimental, to step outside of the box of what was quote-unquote normal rock and roll music. That's what led to other artists kind of going, okay, we don't have to follow this template. We can do different things too. And that's how music has evolved. And that's the beauty for me of music, is how it's evolved over years, how it's changed, how when you listen to Chuck Berry, you can still understand how that indirectly influenced bands of today, because it's just a continuum.
Absolutely.
And Brian was such a big part of that.
Sure was. I'm glad you chimed in, Brian. Thanks for calling this morning.
You bet. Have a good rest of the day. Talk to you Monday.
You as well, sir. Bye-bye. Brian Allison is our musicologist who joins us weekly, Monday mornings at 11 for This Week in Music History. But of course, he's got a perspective to share on the now just late Brian Wilson, who passed away yesterday at the age of 82. We'll be talking more about it as well with Eric Alper on the show this morning at 10. Let's get to your Farwell Show 5 for this Thursday morning, the 12th of June. Number 1, plans underway for 5 new apartment towers in Kitchener, creating 2,400 new housing units. The towers are proposed for the corner of Cortland and Block Line. Maximum building heights will be capped at 35 stories thanks to flight path restrictions from the Breslau Airport. The developer hopes to break ground next year. Number 2, parishioners are rallying to save a near 100-year-old church in downtown Kitchener. The Diocese of Hamilton has called for the closure of St. Joe's on Cortland at Madison, saying declining attendance and increasing costs make it impossible to keep the church open. After multiple appeals were denied by the diocese, parishioners have now taken their appeal all the way to the Vatican. St. Joe's is slated to close June 25th with its final Mass on June 22nd. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, a Canadian is among the more than 240 passengers and crew on an Air India flight that crashed this morning. About 5 minutes after takeoff, the plane was bound for London's Gatwick Airport. Number 4, a new study shows more surgeries are being performed, but wait times are still longer than before the pandemic. The Canadian Institute for Health Information report looked at wait times for hip and knee replacements, cataract procedures, cancer surgeries, MRIs, and CT scans in 2019 and in 2024. It notes a shortage of healthcare workers, including surgical staff, is another factor contributing to the longer wait times. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, time is running out to get a ticket in Kitchener Westmount Rotary's Vacation Fantasy Lottery. Ticket packages start as little as $20, and a limited number of tickets will be sold. The top prize is an Asian temple tour worth more than $21,000. You can get tickets at KW, V for vacation, F for fantasy, L for lottery.ca. KWVFL.ca. Sales close next Tuesday, the 17th. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Thursday morning, the 12th of June. We're going to take a break. When we come back, one of the pillars of this show is transparency, right? We are all about transparency, accountability, responsibility, and there's a cold truth I think we have to share here. We have to be honest with each other. We have to be accountable. We have to be transparent. And now that the city of Cambridge is considering moving in the same direction as Kitchener and Waterloo by banning the sale of fireworks within the boundaries of city limits, I think we have to be honest about the real reason this is happening. Can you handle the truth? We'll talk about it on your morning wake-up call. Next on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Where did your long hair go? Where is the girl I used to know? How could you lose that happy glow? Oh, Caroline, no.
A Another classic from Pet Sounds. Yes, Jen Tan, who is the gal on the other side of the glass, will spin some Beach Boys for us through the day today. They won't all be from Pet Sounds, although we could just go track for track on what arguably is one of the best albums ever recorded. Speaking of that, on the Flipside this morning, it's Thursday. We always spend some time on Thursdays having a little bit of fun, and we'll do that this morning on the Flipside at 11:30 by asking you your favorite album of all time. It's the one you're taking with you to the desert island. But that's at 11:30 on the Flipside. Less fun right now because I think we have to look in the mirror here, okay? Just to be brutally honest. So I should have had a clip of Jack Nicholson ready right now yelling, "You can't handle the truth," but I know you can. And so we'll speak some cold truth here on the show this morning. I read yesterday that a report coming to Cambridge Council next week looks at how that city might best deal with the fireworks problem. And when I say the fireworks problem, you understand what it is I'm talking about, because we have had some problems, and some very serious problems, with fireworks in our community over the last number of years. And in response to that, what Kitchener and Waterloo have done is ban the sale of fireworks within city limits starting in 2026. So you can still set them off. You can still have a fireworks-related celebration, but you will not be able to buy the fireworks within the cities starting next year. And the report coming to Cambridge Council recommends that Cambridge follow suit. I don't think this is the right approach. I don't generally favor bans anyway, but in this particular case, when you can go to Wilmot, where they, I think wisely, decided to not ban the sale, we can still get our hands on fireworks if we so choose. And so I don't think this is the right way to go. According to the report, the city of Cambridge received last year 79 fireworks-related complaints. And I'm sorry, but my question is, that's all? Like 79 complaints about something is enough reason for city staff to recommend banning the sale? 79 complaints? I like to joke, how many complaints about high property taxes will it take before we ban property taxes? I also received, and this is what got me thinking about this cold truth this morning, because I posted this on my X account at Farwell_WR, and I received a response from a councillor in Kitchener, where again, the sale of fireworks is banned starting next year. Because I was pointing out that I think 79 complaints is a pretty low bar for banning something, and I don't think banning sales is going to solve the problem here. And the Kitchener councillor pointed out that it might just reduce impulse buying and then the impulsive behavior that comes with it. Because really, besides a ban, the only other thing we could do is have massive enforcement. And this councillor in Kitchener says he's not prepared to raise taxes for that, which I can get behind. I understand that. But it brings me around to what I believe is the cold truth here. And I know you can handle it. So let's just look at ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves this. What is it that we're really dealing with here? Yes, we've seen some terrible behaviors, reckless, irresponsible, dangerous. Those should be enforced, and they have been. Remember the man that shot the firework at a councillor in Waterloo? Arrested and charged. That's the way it should work. The vast majority of these complaints about fireworks are nuisance complaints. So I ask you to look in the mirror and ask yourself, does my kid ever do something that annoys me? Does my spouse ever do something that annoys me? Does my coworker ever do something that annoys me? Oh, that happens? And how is it that we deal with that nuisance? Oh, do we just deal with it directly? Do we just shrug it off and say, hey, you know, they have an annoying habit or a nuisance characteristic, and we get on with our lives? Folks, we live in a community that has 700,000 people. That means there are 699,999 others besides you. Sometimes one of those or two of those or 79 of those other 699,999 people are going to do something that annoys you. It's like a big family. It's going to happen. And you know what you got to do? You just got to say, it's annoying today, but it'll be over tomorrow. Like, this is where we're at here. It's a big community. It's a great community. Sometimes your neighbor is going to do something that's annoying. Get over it. We got to get over it. This is getting out of control. That's the cold truth. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
I love the colorful clothes she wears and the way the sunlight plays upon her head.
Oh, we don't have good vibrations about fireworks, though. Sue sends an email to Mike at 570news.com, says, Mike, the fireworks are getting out of hand. People were setting them off, jackwagons, good use of the word, Sue says. We're setting them off in Waterloo Park at 10 o'clock on Monday night. That disturbs the birds and scares us who thought it might be gunshots. And Sue, listen, I love you. I do. But then you realized it wasn't gunshots and you went back to not being scared, right? We just have to realize 699,999 other people in this region besides us. They're going to do some things that annoy us. Paul, good morning.
Good morning. This, to me, this sounds like a perfectly logical thing to do.
Here we go.
The sale of fireworks within the city of Cambridge. After all, actually, it would not be socially responsible to go after the people who are actually causing the problem. That could offend them and might hurt their feelings. So instead of going after the responsible people, we need to go after society as a whole, because obviously it's society's fault. And why should we stop there? There's people out there that like to go out and have a couple of drinks and then get in their car and drive. These people are not being responsible, so society needs to do something to correct this. And since we can't blame the individual, we don't know what their reasons were for going out and driving drunk and running over somebody and killing them. We don't know what their reasons are, but we should feel sorry for them. And in return, we should ban the sale of alcohol to everyone. That way the person responsible does not feel isolated. But then again, hey, we got people out there who like to get in a car and speed. Okay, now,
Paul, I'm running out of time here.
Socially responsible people don't speed, but we have some people who aren't socially responsible. I believe that we need to ban all vehicles in order to make sure that nobody goes out there and speeds. It's a socially responsible thing to do. Do not blame the criminal, blame the victims.
All right, Paul, and I'll leave the last word right there to you. As I said before, it's getting out of hand. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio.
Catch a wave and you're sitting on top of the world. Don't be afraid to try the greatest sport around. Catch a wave, catch a wave. Those who don't just have to put it down. You paddle out, turn around and raise, and baby, that's all there is to the coastline craze. You gotta catch a wave and you're sitting on top of the world.
Some concerning news to share with you from Equifax Canada when it comes to mortgage delinquencies. The mortgage delinquency rate nationally is currently at its highest level since 2016-2017, so almost a decade. And as of this moment, more Ontarians are today missing mortgage payments than at any time since Equifax started tracking that data back in 2012. Allison Kemper is an associate professor in the Department of Entrepreneurship and Strategy at Toronto Metropolitan University's Rogers School of Business Management. Joins us for the conversation. Allison, good morning.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
I appreciate you making the time for this conversation today because, as I said, that's concerning data from Equifax Canada.
It is worrisome, eh?
Yeah, what is that telling you?
Well, it tells me that people have gotten the short end of the stick in terms of the cycles of mortgage rate dips and hills, and the price of real estate and the job market. So there's three different markets that all have to be positive for people to be able to buy a house and keep it. One is you have to buy a house at the right price, right? You have to get a mortgage rate that's not going to go crazy on you and make your house unaffordable later. And you need to keep your job. So we're having a problem because the price of money, loans, mortgages, has been so all over the map because of the pandemic and the kind of crash the market said, and then the recovery. And then we have this crash and rebuilding of the real estate market also because of the pandemic. And right now, people are kind of uncertain about their jobs because we have to retool the whole economy because of the Trump tariffs.
So what are the implications of these mortgage delinquencies? And if, for example, people are unable to keep their homes?
Well, we all know that it's really hard to get an apartment that you could afford. I'm in Toronto. I've owned a house for almost 40 years because I'm old. But my kids have had to work really hard to find apartments that they could afford. And I think those of us who are older watch our kids doing that, and those of us that aren't older know that there's a whole lot of people that can't afford houses and are trying really hard to afford their apartments. So if a lot of people move out of the ownership market and back into rental accommodation, that's a lot of pressure on apartments, on rental accommodation. So the availability and the price may become a problem.
One of the things that occurs to me as well, Allison, is with the housing that is on the market today, I'm not entirely certain that the housing that's being built matches what people are looking for. I could be wrong about that, but we keep hearing about this missing middle housing that seems to be lacking.
Well, we know a lot about the fact that if you're developing great big houses that costs somewhere between $1.5 and $3 million, you're going to make a lot more money than if you're selling modest fourplexes that cost $650,000 or $750,000, right? And it's a real problem that what people can afford is the more modest stuff, and what developers want to build is the more lavish stuff because the profit margins are just bigger on the big stuff. And the same thing has happened in the auto market, right? The automakers have upsold us for years and years and years now that we need bigger and bigger cars. I mean, 20, 30, 40 years ago, we all drove sedans and they were cheap. Now, we're driving these giant SUVs and 4x4s and they cost a lot of money, but that's because the automakers want better margins.
I'm old enough to remember that a pickup truck on the road usually had a toolbox in the back.
Mm-hmm. And I live a block from the subway in Toronto, and there are people on my street that have pickup trucks, and they don't have driveways in this part of the city, so they had to park them on the road. Oh, well, if they do have a driveway, it's the size that would accommodate a sedan from the 1920s, right? Like, it's tiny. So it's a real mismatch between what people want to sell us and what we need.
Do you foresee any sort of leveling out in the market? I mean, interest rates have been stable for a little while, but we're still not sure, I don't think, in housing. And then jobs remain uncertain as well. Do you foresee a immediate to near-term future where things kind of settle out?
Well, the problem with the housing market has been decades in the making, right? So back, I'm sorry to keep sounding like a really old person, but then I am. But back in the 80s, we were still building houses that did not ever work as an investment. They were non-market houses. And it would be like a non-profit that owned the house. It might be owned by a third party, like a church or, community group, or it might be owned by the people who live there, but they could never make a profit on it. It was non-market housing. And most of those were co-op houses. And that meant that you were paying just for living there. You weren't speculating on the value of your land or on the value of the building. And we haven't done that for almost 40 years, maybe 40 years in all. And that means that the only housing that we can buy in Canada now, it has to be bundled as an investment. And as any of us that have ever invested in anything know, sometimes the price goes up and sometimes it comes down. There's a risk in investment. So we have this problem, which is that the developers want to build things that we can't afford. And the other problem is that the government isn't saying, actually, we get it. We understand that not everybody wants to make a risky investment, and we can't de-risk housing because it's an investment like everything else. So the Minister of Housing, Gregor Robertson, has said, no, you can't bring down the price of housing. What he's saying is, I get it that it's an investment, but I want to de-risk that investment because so many people have put their life savings into their houses. Well, that's kind of a dumb thing to do for the government because it means that they're less able to build housing that people can afford, less able to build housing that will stay affordable over decades, right? Because if somebody buys it in this new housing program, they're going to want to sell it in 10 years and make a profit, and there will be investors that want to jack up the price as high as possible. So we're going to be back in that cycle again. And the only thing I think that's going to work at this point, and I hope that Gregor Robertson figures this out, is that we have to say, okay, people can spend all the money they want in other kinds of investments, but we need to make sure that there's enough housing that is decoupled, that is not associated with investment risk. That is just basically you pay for what the space you live in, and that's it. And we're not doing that.
Alison, I really appreciate the perspective today. Thank you very much for joining the show.
Nice to chat, Mike.
You
Take
too.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Alison Kemper is an associate professor at Toronto Metropolitan University's Ted Rogers School of Management. Delinquencies, i.e. mortgage payments being missed, are at their highest level since Equifax started tracking that data back in 2012. What is this telling you, and what might the answers be? Getting government back into building homes that are not for profit, not meant as investments, just the sheer shelter? What about, and I've heard this repeatedly of late, extending the amortization on a home purchase or a mortgage to 50 years instead of 30, for example? Your thoughts always welcome on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
You were paying just for living there. You weren't speculating on the value of your land or on the value of the building. And we haven't done that for almost 40 years, maybe 40 years in all. And that means that the only housing that we can buy in Canada now, it has to be bundled as an investment. That is just basically you pay for what the space you live in, and that's it.
Alison Kemper is an associate professor in the Ted Rogers School of Management at Toronto Metropolitan University. Joins us to talk about the number of missed mortgage payments that Equifax Canada is tracking. In Ontario, more missed mortgage payments than at any other time since Equifax started tracking that data back in 2012. The struggle, as they say, is real. And what you hear in that clip from Professor Kemper is the idea of the government being involved again in housing, which they were until the 1990s. And this whole idea of the investment, I've been thinking about it a lot. You know me, I tend to dwell on numbers. And when I start breaking down the amount you put down for a home, then the mortgage payments over the 25 or 30, I was a 25-year mortgage guy. But man, oh man, you start adding up that interest, and I think the real investment is by the bank. They're the ones that really collect over the course of paying off one's home and the interest that you pay over that time. Sure, it's great at the end that at least the money is still there, right? You're kind of getting it back, but you're laying out. It's not like it's something that's returning you, 100% on your initial investment, unless you manage to pay it off very quickly or you bought a really, really long time ago. Anyway, let's go to the phones and get your solutions because you always have them. George, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How you doing there?
Great, thank you. How are you?
Good. I think you're onto something. It's the banks that are making the money, especially when you put your mortgage at a 25%. Sorry, 25 years, right? They're making the money because you're not paying off your principal so much. I think the answer here is somehow, I don't know how they're going to do it, but find a balance where maybe drop the prices of homes down 5, 10, 15%. And on the other end, for young people who want to buy, an incentive where they can afford that next little bump up. And then you're getting closer to the middle. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from, George. I think there's room on both sides of the spectrum there that you're talking about for some give. And the other piece of that with the young people who are looking to buy, and you heard Professor Kemper allude to this, and that is the job market. You have to have some level of stability so that you can continue making those mortgage payments, whatever they are, when you sign for that mortgage. Dave, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. One important subject that's missing from this conversation always is the importance of paying up to 10% on the anniversary date of your mortgage. People would rather pay $1,000 and go on a vacation and fly somewhere, fly south, fly here, fly there, buy a new car, rather than pay up to 10% on the anniversary year of your mortgage. Have a great day, Mike.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. I'm a big believer, Dave. I hear you, right? Why do you want to keep paying all that interest? You gotta put off some of those nice to haves to take care of the important stuff. It's a great point. Sean, good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you, Mike?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I have been better. I'm calling more with a question. I'm in a situation where my mortgage is coming up mid-month. It comes to its term, and I have to figure out what to do with it. I renovated my basement and rented out to tenants that don't pay rent, and it's put me in a very bad situation. And I'm wondering if there's any sort of mechanism that I can use with the bank to make them aware of this, to give me some sort of stay for a few months while this resolves itself with the landlord-tenant board. Otherwise, I can't renegotiate because I'm in arrears, and I can't pay it off because I'm not getting any rental income for as many months as I haven't been getting rental income. I'm just kind of stuck, and it's a really hot topic in my head, at least, the past half year or so, and I thought maybe someone might have more knowledge than me, which is very likely.
Sean, I'm so sorry to hear of the plight that you're in. I don't know the answer off the top of my head unless you can work something out with your lender. But you're right. Our 44 listeners are intelligent people. So if somebody's got a suggestion, I'll make sure I pass it along if they share it with me.
Well, I appreciate it. And you're one of the few things that gets my brain going every day. So I appreciate you. And in everything you guys do. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Good luck with everything. That's tell you what, I've talked about this with my beloved many times. For those of you who are renting out to tenants, your landlords in some respects, full power to you. I don't know that I've got the stomach for it because it can be tough. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Well, it's been building up inside of me for, I don't know how long.
More memories of Brian Wilson coming up after the 10 a.m. update in the 570 News Center. But before we get there, one more quick one on housing. Ian, I got about 45 seconds.
Okay, two things. There's a saying, buy low, sell high. That applies to stocks. That applies, I think, as well to so many aspects of things if you can do it. And the other thing is, in regards to the banks you're saying about the interest, well, Einstein quoted that the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest, and that works in positive and negative. So if you're in housing and, you're getting that low interest rate, that's great. But it also can compound if you're not doing things properly. And honestly, it's really sad to hear that, so many people are struggling just to, pay for a housing and keep things up with the payments and that. So, you know what? If you can find a house on the cheap and reno it and do it up the way you actually want to do it and turn around and flip it, that would be great. So I wish the best of luck to all those people out there who are struggling.
All right, Ian, appreciate that. And of course, with interest on a mortgage, it's not compounding. You're just paying it for 20, 25, even 30 years. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
I may not always love you, but long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be without you.
Oh, another classic from Pet Sounds. Arguably one of the greatest albums ever recorded. It recorded, of course, by the Beach Boys and one of that band's founding members, Brian Wilson, passed away yesterday at the age of 82. Eric Alper is a music commentator and publicist, joins us for some reflections on the genius, I don't think that's an exaggeration, that was Brian Wilson. Eric, good morning.
Good morning. Happy to talk with you.
How you feeling today?
A little bit bizarre, man. To be honest with you, I didn't really think at the beginning of the week that we would be losing Sly Stone at the age of 82, and then less than 24 hours later, we lose another genius in Brian Wilson at the same age. And what's amazing about it is that taking a look at the hour-by-hour charts of Amazon and iTunes and Spotify, Sly's greatest hits is zooming up the charts, as well as the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds and Endless Summer. So I fully expect a lot of people to go back and listen to the music and realize why you and I are talking about them in the first place.
Absolutely. And you used that same word, Eric, genius. I don't think it's unfair in this instance when we're talking about Brian Wilson. What in your mind, or to your ears perhaps, made Brian Wilson a musical genius?
I think the fact that, when you talk about the greatest producers of all time, George Martin from the Beatles has to be up there. But Brian Wilson, I think, might be the greatest only because he was a performer and a writer and an arranger and also just played in a band. In the 1960s, look, 63 years ago, when the Beach Boys started, they were singing about surfing and cars and high school dances and pop songs, and it was all really, really nice. But Brian Wilson had much, much bigger dreams. If you listen to songs like In My Room or The Warmth of the Sun, they traded the beach and the sand in California for some real internal soul searching. The more that you read about somebody like Brian, you realize just what an absolutely damaged life that he had, with physical violence suffered by the hands of his father, a psychiatrist that even messed with his mind even further in the 1970s. He needed to get a lot of things out there, and he was vulnerable, and he was scared, and he was a child in some aspects of it. And while the rest of the band decided that they didn't want to be in the studio anymore with him, they decided to go out on the road and tour the world and play the songs and make money and get away from their wives and girlfriends. And Brian Wilson decided to stay in the studio and make albums like Pet Sounds. I don't think there's any other band on the planet that had a band member say, you guys go out on the road, I'm just going to stay here and create the music for you to sing.
And you talk about Pet Sounds as an album, and we touched on it at the beginning of the show today, but what Brian Wilson put into that album in terms of the instruments that appeared, the way it was arranged and produced, etc., laid the groundwork. I mean, heck, the Beatles felt like they needed a response album to Pet Sounds.
Yeah, I mean, look, their response puts this whole Kendrick Lamar versus Drake. It's pretty amazing where, you have an idea that before Brian Wilson, most artists would go into the studios, sing and play in front of a microphone, and then hope for the best. The very fact that Brian built the songs in the studio with Good Vibrations, which was literally assembled across 4 studios in dozens of takes, that he used classical music instrumentation that wasn't really heard before in pop music. He used cellos and harpsichords and theremins, like a painter, like Dali, mixing colors together like Picasso. And every time that he turned the studio or hit that button, it was like a brushstroke. And every other producer, from George Martin to Nigel Godrich, who worked with Radiohead, they all have been taking notes since that album came out.
You used the description or the genre of pop. Did you ever get into the debate, Eric, as to whether or not the Beach Boys fit the rock and roll mold?
Yeah, absolutely. Because sometimes whenever the induction ceremonies for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame come up and they talk about, should rap artists get in there or R&B or disco artists, and my answer is still the same. It's like, yeah, because it's the spirit of rock and roll. It's kind of, messing with your parents, angering your teachers, messing with authority. A song like God Only Knows, which Paul McCartney has always claimed that was the greatest song that he's ever heard and wished that he wrote. God Only Knows was a really controversial song. Having the word God in it almost defiantly made radio not play that song. And, it's one of those things where if you use your influences to create something new and you've got, the rock and roll instruments, then absolutely, for sure. And, we're just talking about a time when, in 1965, 66, 67, rock and roll was only like 18 years old by then. So the music industry was still trying to sell The Sound of Music and West Side Story and orchestra music. But here comes the Beach Boys making something so current, so modern, and specifically to the teenagers, and that's what made it so different.
You alluded earlier, Eric, to the demons that Brian Wilson most certainly battled, and yet he remained highly regarded until the end by his peers, from Lennon and McCartney early on to Elton John, Bruce Springsteen later. What gave Brian Wilson that staying power?
I think it's his vulnerability, to be honest with you. I'll add, the Fleet Foxes and REM and Bon Iver, people that were listening to the Beach Boys and kind of grabbing the harmony sounds from that. I think that when you take a look at the pop artists today of Olivia Rodrigo or SZA or Billie Eilish or Chappell Roan, their audiences don't just expect those artists to talk about their vulnerability and their pain and their suffering, or like in the case of Taylor Swift, their bad relationships in the past. Brian Wilson was putting all of that thoughts and dreams and hopes into his music decades before they did. So he kind of laid the groundwork for artists to kind of be a little bit joyful and sad at the same time. Wouldn't it be nice sounds like a great love song for prom night. But the whole thing is that it's right there in the title. He's dreaming about, wouldn't it be nice? It's sad that he doesn't have what he's actually singing about. But meanwhile, it's supposed to be like this happy love song. And that's the genius of him, is like he can make you kind of feel really, really happy by having lyrics that are a little bit with tinges of sadness and heartbreak.
It's great to get you on the show today to share this perspective and some of the memories. Eric, thanks very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. We'll talk soon.
Look forward to it. Bye-bye. Eric Alper is a music commentator, a publicist, joining us this morning to talk about the legend that was, we must now use past tense, Brian Wilson, passing away yesterday at the age of 82. And great point by Eric, because we touched on it at the beginning of our show, I think on Tuesday, with Sly and the Family Stone, right? And Sly, the head man there, passing away as well, also at the age of 82. What a week for some musical legends. But focusing today on the widespread popularity of the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson. How did the news impact you? Got a Beach Boys and or Brian Wilson memory you want to share? A favorite Beach Boys song you want to talk about? Let's hear from you on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
When you talk about the greatest producers of all time, George Martin from the Beatles has to be up there. But Brian Wilson, I think, might be the greatest only because he was a performer and a writer and an arranger. And Brian Wilson decided to stay in the studio and make albums like Pet Sounds. I don't think there's any other band on the planet that had a band member say, you guys go out on the road. I'm just going to stay here and create the music for you to sing.
Eric Alper, music commentator, publicist, and a go-to guy on a day like today as we mourn the passing of a musical giant in Brian Wilson, passing away yesterday at the age of 82. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. I will stand behind the word genius, and I will argue in favor of the genius that was Brian Wilson. I always go back to a conversation with a buddy. My group of best friends, most of us are heavily into music. One less so, but still enjoys it. And we went to see Roger Waters of Pink Floyd play his solo show, The Wall, at it was at the ACC/Scotiabank Arena. And I remember the part of the show where Waters was behind the wall, and as soon as the riff started, the crowd went kind of nuts. And our buddy asked afterwards, like he said, it could have been anybody playing that. Like, why is it so great that it was Roger Waters there and the crowd was going crazy for Roger Waters? And I said, well, really, because he did it first, right? He was the first one to put those chords in that progression and give us that riff, for example. And I would put Brian Wilson in that category with the things that he was doing, how he did them, the creativity that was involved in it, blazing the trail, frankly. And I know this is an old man's lament, but that's why it's tough for me to listen to anything today, because I don't find much of it, if any of it, to be original. I like to go back to those classics. And when I think about Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys and my introduction to them, I think about the Beach Boys being the quote-unquote oldies when I was a kid. And for those of you of a certain vintage like me, remember the oldies of today were around like 2000 to 2005, right? 20 to 25 years ago. That's oldies. So when I'm in my formative music years in the early to mid 1980s, the oldies were the late 50s into the mid 1960s. Hello, Beach Boys. And I drove around in my 1969 Mustang with the windows down and the stereo cranked up. I put a good stereo and a good engine in that car back in the day, and I loved me some Beach Boys. And I will put them in the category of rock and roll as well. This whole debate, pop versus rock, what genre do they fit into? Eric Alper mentioned it in that last conversation. Rock and roll was so new. It was less than 2 decades old when the Beach Boys came around. It is something that I would describe as much more poppy or pop-like today, but absolutely I'd put Brian Wilson in there in amongst the luminaries in rock and roll. Dave's on the phone with us. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning again, Mike. One thing, people always say July 4th, amusement rides, hot dog eating contests, but they forget July 4th is Beach Boy music. And look out in a couple weeks' time on July 4th when all the tributes come out on Brian Wilson.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. You too. The Beach Boys and summer go hand in hand. Even though I've never surfed in my life, love me some Beach Boys. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Round, round, get around, I get around, yeah, get around, round, round, I get around, I get around, round.
Oh, we want you to get out and around town this weekend. Lots of reasons to do so, including the 4th annual Canadian Arab Festival, which is coming up this Sunday in downtown Kitchener. Asma Alwash is one of the organizers. Asma, what is the Canadian Arab Festival all about?
This is like Kawa's annual festival. Is more than a celebration. It's a powerful platform for economic empowerment and for diversity and inclusion. So this event will be on Sunday, June 15th, at Carter Square, downtown Kitchener, from 12 to 9 o'clock. There will be a lot of vendors, from food to cultures to like craft, a very popular Arab musicians and artists. And this year, we have like somebody special to provide us with children's show. So we are hosting Eric Tramplin as well this year. This is our first collaboration with Eric to have like a children's show at 3 o'clock p.m. from 3 to 4 o'clock. There will be a lot of like family activities, bouncy castles, face painting, henna. So I would really invite everybody to come on Sunday and celebrate with us.
You mentioned CAWA, the Canadian Arab Women Association. Why did you start this annual festival?
The Canadian Arab Women Association, Mike, is all about promoting the Arab culture and the cross-culture within our community. And when I said, like, this is like a platform, like, for the broader community, Mike, like, to learn about the Arab culture, because there are, like, many assumptions about the Arab culture, as you know, that, like, every, like, Arab are, like, Muslim, or every, like, Muslim, they are Arab, and of what, like, happening in Middle East, and assumptions of terrorism and, like, violence and all of that. So we decided, like, through this, like, platform and through, like, this festival is, like, bringing, like, people together, and through, like, some educational, like, booth that we will have, like, on Sunday and every year, is like we are highlighting some like the culture of like Morocco, like Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, like, and like to have like a platform for people to ask a question and to learn more about like us. So then we can come together and celebrate the diversity and our differences together. So this is like the reason why we are having this annual festival every year in downtown Kitchener.
It's a great idea, and I love the fact that it brings people together. It's open to everyone on Sunday from noon until 9 at Carl Zer Square. Asma, thank you very much for joining the show.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Asma Alwash, one of the organizers of the upcoming, the 4th annual Canadian Arab Festival. And that is on Sunday, as you heard, from noon until 9 at Carl Zer Square in downtown Kitchener. All right, we're fast approaching 11 a.m. or 10:30, pardon me. At your update, I was already thinking ahead because we got a call from Debbie who wanted to share a Beach Boys story, and we didn't have time for it here. So she's going to be calling back during our Flipside conversation at 11:30 when we talk about our favorite albums of all time. Debbie, we're looking forward to your story. Beach Boys related, I know. As along with everything else on the show today, we remember Brian Wilson. Thursday mornings, 10:30, Gary Chalk stops by with his humor column, Living Retired, brought to life on our show, and that is next on The Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio.
Hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah. I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. Girl, you just don't realize what you do to me. When you hold me in your arms so tight, you let me know everything's alright. I'm hooked on a feeling.
Thursday mornings, 10:30. The feeling is one of laughter, levity. It's a beautiful sunny morning, and Gary Chalk is here with his humor column, Living Retired. He brings it to life on our show each and every Thursday morning. Don't forget to get it for yourself. Go to livingretired.press. You'll find the column there online. You can sign up to have it delivered right to your inbox. livingretired.press. Gary, good morning.
Good morning, Mike, with a mic, and a shout-out to Mary on her bike.
Mary on her bike. This is what keeps her pedaling, Gary. This weekly conversation. And listen, you are no stranger to the microphone either, with a past in radio, and you must have a thought or two on Brian Wilson.
Oh my gosh! After we get through with this, I'm putting on Pet Sounds. That's going to be the music for the day. You know what? To me, a genius is a person who can also relate to the spontaneous, impromptu, almost silliness. Think of the Beach Boys' classic song, "Help Me, Rhonda." Impromptu, and who wrote it? Brian Wilson.
There you go. Well said, sir. Well said. Yeah, and it's a great listen. I did the same thing with Pet Sounds yesterday. It really makes mowing the lawn go a little bit easier, Gary. Little Pet Sounds to take you through the walk.
Well, if there's enough cuts on the album, you may get all the way over past your neighbor's lawn.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Hey, I was listening yesterday, and Blue Jays baseball, the interview there. Boy, I'm back on the bandwagon. The Jays are winning.
You and me both. Let's go. A sweep of the cards. Come on.
You betcha. Time to get some tickets. Tyler and I, we usually go. My son Tyler, we usually go to a few games a year at the Rogers Center. Last year, I don't know, it was circumstance or we purposely, but we selected a game with the Boston Red Sox in town at Toronto, and it was a Tuesday, so it was Looney Tuesday hot dog night. Hot dogs for Looney, I'm in.
I love it. I love it.
You bet. I told Jan we were going. It was Looney $1 hot dog night. She just rolled her eyes and said, "Gary, Loonies and you go together like wieners and buns."
Now, Gary, come on. How many Looney hot dogs did you eat?
I'll be honest. We had, between my son and I, 4. And I know that to this day, Mike, because we got there early, and for the first pitch, we had some really nice seats. I said, let's go, I'll buy the hot dogs, 4 of them for $4, great deal. You get the beer. The 2 beer were $29.
Gary, you're a wise businessman. You're a wise businessman.
And Tyler brought them. He said, "Dad, just so you know, they stopped the beer sales in the 7th inning." And I said, "Tyler, just so you know, beer sales have already stopped for us. First pitch hasn't even been thrown yet." Oh my gosh! And that's when I learned, in around the 5th inning, the difference between 40-year-old men and 70-year-old men at a baseball game. The 40-year-olds, they enjoy the game sitting in their seats holding a beer. The 70-year-olds, we can't hold our beer, so we watch the game on large television monitors over top the urinal.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew that's where you were going, and Gary, that's why I always choose a seat close to the aisle.
Yeah, you got it. Exactly. The only thing I can't understand, who is the bonehead who came up with the idea to put mustard, relish, and ketchup into those teeny-weeny packages about the size of a 10-cent postage stamp? Who thought up that?
It's somebody who made a fortune off of watching us try to rip them open without making a mess.
Well, it's even worse at a ball game. I've got my flimsy plastic cup of beer, expensive beer, between my knees. I've got 2 hot dogs I'm balancing on my lap, and I got my hands up at my teeth trying to tear the corner off a packet of relish. What can possibly go wrong?
I can only imagine, Gary Chalk.
Excuse me. It's 2 fans squeezing their way past me to get to their seats. I look like sort of like Nick Wallanda, sort of balancing on a tightrope going over Niagara Falls. And I'm not lying, Mike. I just got back down into my seat. And what do we hear? Excuse me. Now they're coming back. Sorry, we had the wrong row. And after all that, I managed to, I missed the hot dog, but I did squirt green relish on my pants, and I got yellow mustard. It was sort of on my shirt and on the top of my bowl cap, and also on the jacket of the man sitting in front of me.
He won't notice till later. Don't worry about it.
Well, that's what Tyler said. He said, Dad, what are you doing? He said, I said, look, Tyler, just don't tell your mother. He said, don't worry, she'll see the mess when she does the laundry. Oh, my gosh. And it was one of those pitchers' duels. The 9th inning, the Red Sox took the lead. Mammoth home run. Of course, I saw it in the men's washroom on the big monitor over the urinal. And at that point, it's going to be over, so I said, to beat the traffic, Tyler, I'm going, and I left early. This is when things became really interesting, Mike. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I pulled into her house, got the car into the garage, closed the door to the garage, and that's when it happened. Honk, 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 honk. I leaned in to get my sweater from the back seat of the car, accidentally pressed the panic button on the key fob. And I'm trying to do this all nice and quiet.
Yeah, so much for slipping home quietly at 1 in the morning.
Well, exactly. And then it gets worse. Honk, honk, honk. Now, unfortunately, in the darkness, I grasped the wrong key fob, and I've got Jan's key fob on, and it's her car. We got dueling banjos. Well, now it's dueling horns in the middle of the night. And to be honest this is when Looney Gary showed his true colors, Mike. I got to the door, to the back of the house, and I got bright yellow mustard, bits of green relish on my pants and my shirt sleeves, my ball cap. I got a couple of torn condiment packages stuck on my shoe. And Jan, of course, woke up. She's too tired to laugh. She just looked and said, Gary, you look like that time you did a faceplant in the condiments at Denny's all-you-can-eat buffet.
Next time, go for the pancakes, Gary. Gary Chalk joins us every Thursday morning at this time to bring his humor column, Living Retired to Life, on the show. Along with the Blue Jays game, Gary had a recent experience at an acupuncturist as well. We'll get that story as we continue Living Retired on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Well, since you put me down, I've been out doing in my head. I come in late at night, and in the morning I just lay in bed. But Ronnie, you look so fine, and I know it wouldn't take much time for you to help me, Rhonda, help me get her out of my heart. Help me, Rhonda, help me, Rhonda. Help me, Rhonda, help me, Rhonda. Help me, Rhonda, help me, Rhonda. Help me, Rhonda, help me, Rhonda.
Well, it's almost as if Gary Chalk had requested it, made reference to Help Me Rhonda earlier in this Living Retired segment, where Gary helps us get out of a bad mood. If you were in a bad mood before, guaranteed that changes when you get to hear about face planting into the condiment section of an all-you-can-eat buffet at Denny's.
Oh, dear.
Oh, Gary, it's always a joy.
It is. Have you ever had acupuncture?
One time.
You did?
I
you?
did. I had suffered such an injury. It was a pinched nerve, I think, and it was so painful for me, Gary. This is many years ago, but I was desperate. I mean desperate to rid myself of this discomfort, and I tried everything, including acupuncture.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I tried acupuncture. Well, it was sort of acupuncture. It was many years ago.
Wait a minute. Did you do it to yourself?
Pardon me?
Did you do it to yourself? Sort of acupuncture when I was trying to hammer that nail and I missed the board.
Oh, well, there's that. No, this was what I call Jan-induced acupuncture.
Okay.
She's the shopper. We're in a big department store in menswear, and she insisted that I try some clothes on, and she gave me some shirts and some pants and all this stuff in my arms, and I went into the change room. Mike, a guy takes his life in his hands when he enters the change room. The floors are littered with sharp, pain-inflicting pins. That was my introduction to acupuncture. I was letting out a blood-curdling scream from all these pin jabs. I still to this day believe the pain was worse than childbirth. I can't prove it because men are always at the hospital coffee shop when their wife delivers. I'm just here to say it was pretty painful.
You be careful with that comparison, though, Gary. You know that.
Know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Hey, well, one thing that happened, all the screaming got the store security staff. I knew they were coming because the architect who designs the change rooms for men, they put in a half a door from your knees to your shoulders, so I could see the security coming. Imagine, 8 years at architectural school, you're learning complicated theorems on compressed particle board or whatever, and the best the architect can come up with is a half a door on the change room door? And this is the same guy who put in a seat 6 inches wide to sit on, and he's also the guy who gives you one hook to hang all your clothes you're taking off.
I like nuts. That to me is a challenge, Gary. Can I make this work on one hook?
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't because, Jan kept tossing in more clothes over top this half door. She sort of looked like she was in the Army Reserves heaving sandbags on a flooding river. Clothes are teeming in over me. And I know, I'm thinking, surely if Trump and all these presidential orders he's signing, why can't he come up with an order that mandates while men are in the change room trying on clothes, women, your wife has to remain right outside the waiting room door because you got to come out and show her what this stuff looks like. I tell it every time I walk out of the change room, Jan's gone.
Well, because there are other things to shop for, Gary.
Well, certainly.
Yeah.
Now, here's me holding my pants up, don't have a belt on them, no shoes, no socks. I got a shirt that I didn't do the buttons up that I just tried on. I'm traipsing through men's wear, ladies' wear, kids' wear, shoes, electronics, jewelry, luggage, trying to find Jan. I'm holding my pants up, and it gets bad. I got on the escalator so far, and I finally found Jan, where? In the tire department. Oh, my gosh. Now, Jan and I are walking back to the men. Well, I'm walking back. She's about 15 feet behind me because she doesn't want to look like she's with me. But directly behind me, though, is the security guard. He just thinks something's wrong with this guy. And there was something even worse. I got back to the menswear department, to the change room, couldn't open the door. It's locked.
You can't get back in now.
I can't get back in. Finally, I got dressed, walked out with these mounds of clothing that I'm in, and I got a pair of pants and a shirt. And I'm walking out, and we decided, Jan decided that we were going to purchase a few of these things. So we walked over to the checkout area. Actually, Jan walked because I limped from all the pin jabs in my foot.
Of course, yes.
Of course. And this is when it happened. They put the things in the bag, and we're walking from the store, and at the doorway, this recorded message comes on, and it says, "Apparently, we failed to remove the inventory control tag. Please return the item to your sales associate."
Been there.
Only could it happen to me, my first and only time I've had acupuncture, and unlike what you had was legitimate in a nice, clean, sterile clinic, mine was men's change room acupuncture at a department store.
Gary, but you have a story, and that's the best part.
Yeah, that's the best part. And I've got more pins and needles because I'm thinking now of going in to get my shoulder looked at.
I'm here for you. I'll give you all the tips you need. Great chatting with you as always, Gary. We'll talk again next week.
Take care, Mike. Bye now.
Gary Chalk is the humor columnist who writes Living Retired. You can find it online at livingretired.press. While you're there, sign up for the weekly delivery right to your inbox, livingretired.press. And then along with those nasty memos from the boss, you can have a little laugh in your inbox with Living Retired, the humor column. Gary Chalk joins us every Thursday morning at 10:30 to bring it to life here on the show. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, did we get a Farwell show bump when it comes to speed cameras in this region? Oh, I think we did. The Farwell Show strikes again. We'll tell you how coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every once in a while, we get on this show what I like to call the Farwell Show bump. The very first Farwell Show bump we got. And believe you, it's you, not me. They just put my name on the show. But the very first Farwell Show bump we got, I should keep track of these things, was many, many years ago. You know, we've been doing this show, by the way, 8 years as of this month. We started this in 2017. June of 17, we got her underway. And in that time, we've had the occasional bump, including our very first one, which was getting the city of Waterloo to reverse its ridiculous plan for a reconfiguration, reevaluation, restructuring of Waterloo Park and rid itself of the most used baseball diamonds that it had in its inventory. We successfully got the city to change course on that. And I can't help but think that the news this week is another Farwell Show bump, because we have been talking at some length about speed cameras generally, and specifically the need for a rural speed camera strategy. I think this was really championed by Woolwich Township Mayor Sandy Shantz, but we've talked about it on the show, including just earlier this week when we begged for common sense on Lobsinger Line, a road that with the speed camera in place can go from 80 to 50 to 60 to 80 to 40 to 60. It's just madness. So many speed changes on one stretch of Lobsinger, and we just appealed for a little bit of common sense. We understand the idea behind safety zones, school zones, etc., but you got to go and actually experience the zone where you're changing the speed limit to understand the impact. And I happened to be out there on Lobsinger last weekend, and I saw the vehicle at the front of the line of traffic obeying the speed limit get passed by other people who thought, I'm not sitting here doing 40 at this spot on the road because there's not a school to be seen. Well, wouldn't you know, on the very week that we appealed for just a little common sense in the speed camera strategy on Lobsinger Line, then the speed camera disappeared. Poof, gone like a fart in the wind. So no more 40 on Lobsinger Line. The slowest it now goes is 60, making the speed limit changes that much easier to adhere to. Good job by you, Region of Waterloo. Some speed camera common sense, courtesy of the Farwell Show bump. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Reminiscing today with the Beach Boys on the show in honor of the late Brian Wilson, passing away yesterday at the age of 82. I learned something this week. I was this many weeks old when I learned that hawks, yes, the birds, play an important role in management at our region of Waterloo landfill site. Maybe you knew this already because you are smarter than me, but if you didn't, you too are this many weeks old when you find out more. Julia Staines joins us on the show. Julia is the owner of Freebird Falconry and a licensed falconer herself. Julia, good morning.
Good morning.
This is fascinating to me. It makes sense when I read about it, but I didn't know that this was a thing. How do the hawks help manage a landfill site?
Okay, so gulls are very, very smart birds, and they will figure out anything that is not actually going to hurt them, like a decoy, lasers, sound effects, anything like that. But when these hawks are out flying around, they know that's actually a predator, and they know that if they're too slow, they'll get caught. So basically, the sight of the hawk starts to cause them to lift up right away as soon as they see her.
Okay, let me just go back half a step here to gulls are smart. These things that are always squawking around me when I have French fries at the beach, you're telling me they're smart birds, Julia?
Yes, they're extremely smart. Yeah, very, very smart.
Okay, so how do you help the hawks get to the landfill and make sure they do their job? What goes into that?
Okay, so all my birds, I get them from breeders, and so they're all trained by me. So it takes about a month to get one trained so that it can fly and follow me around and listen to commands, basically. So they all live at my house. And then they have special travel boxes that they ride in the truck to the landfill. And then when we get there, I'll usually allow one of the birds to sit on the passenger seat, and we'll drive around the site, and I'll just keep letting her out the window to just keep chasing them and scaring them, basically until they've all left. And then we sit on a perch and kind of wait for them to come back.
Chasing them and scaring them. But aren't hawks natural predators in this environment, Julia?
Yes, they are. Yes. Yep.
So how do you ensure then that they're just chasing and scaring the gulls and not, flying into that flock and making a heck of a mess?
It does happen that they do catch them, and that, again, is why it works. But you're right, that's not the goal. We're supposed to just be scaring them. So basically, they're trained to come back to me for food, but they are a hawk, they're a predator, so their natural instinct, they want to chase those birds. So, yes, it does happen that they catch them, but it's not the goal. We try to avoid if we can, but it's just something that happens.
How does one train a hawk for this purpose?
So they're extremely food motivated. So basically, when you get a young bird from a breeder, you have to get them. First, you just kind of carry them around on your arm and have them get used to just being on your arm. And then at first, they might be a little bit too afraid to take food from you. But then you start just, handing them the food, and then they finally realize, okay, this person's feeding me. All right, this is all right. Then you have them on a leash and have them do like little short jumps on the leash. And as you progress in your training, you can use a longer leash. And then once basically, if it gets to the point where you put them on their perch and you try to walk away from them and they start flying towards you, that's when you know that it's time that you can actually unclip them and have them fly around.
How did you yourself get trained to become a licensed falconer?
So you have to do an apprenticeship for 2 years with another falconer that has had their license for at least 5 years. So I found a falconer that was willing to take me on. And I did my apprenticeship, and it's been great. It's been wonderful.
What do your hawks do in the off season? I don't see a lot of gulls around in the wintertime, for example. Is there a downtime or an off season for the birds?
Yes. So I actually have two teams of birds. So my Harris hawks, they're native to the southwestern United States. So they're excellent for the summer. They can handle our heat really well. So they spend the winter they each have their own shed on my property. And so they just kind of hang out. They have a heat lamp, and they just kind of hang out in their sheds for the winter and just kind of relax. But I do have jobs in the winter. Like there's a lot of crows at the landfill in the winter, and there are still some gulls, so they do usually still have us. And I use my red-tailed hawk mostly, but also the two falcons that have a bit more cold tolerance for that site. And I also take the red-tailed hawk hunting recreationally because falconry actually is hunting with a trained raptor. What I'm doing is I'm using falconry techniques for bird abatement.
Bird abatement, jobs in the winter. Just going back to where this all started for me, I mean, when I read about it, it makes sense, but I hadn't actually thought of this. And I'm sure, Julia, in your work, you're helping to manage or keep those birds at bay in more than just the region of Waterloo. Is there a lot of work for someone in your line of work, in your profession?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a lot of sites that we do. Gulls are also usually a problem on top of industrial buildings. They'll form huge colonies on the roof, so people will hire us to deal with that, as well as like feed mills, other private recycling centers and places like that. There's quite a few shopping malls even, anything like that.
It's absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure it's a very busy time of year. So thank you for taking time out of a day in a busy time of year to share this with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, and you're very welcome.
Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Julia Staines is the owner of Freebird Falconry, a licensed falconer, and it's Julia's hawks who patrol the skies over the region of Waterloo landfill and make sure those gulls don't get in the way of the work that needs to be done. And now maybe, like me, you were this many weeks old when you learned about this little process that's at play. And sometimes, the cycle of life, a gull might not make it through the day after trying to get some lunch over at the landfill. We're going to take a break. When we come back, if I could get a Farwell show bump, I was talking about that just before the news update when it comes to the elimination, at least for now, of a speed camera on Lobsinger Line that didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. I find the number of signs in our community to be a little bit overwhelming and sometimes, quite frankly, redundant or irrelevant. Well, there is a sign in Cambridge that I absolutely want you to ignore. Please ignore this sign, and maybe we can get a Farwell show bump and have it removed entirely. We'll explain coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Catch a wave and you're sitting on top of the world. Don't be afraid to try the greatest sport around.
Well, when I read this story a couple of weeks ago now, I knew it was one that we had to feature on the show because if you've listened recently, you know how frustrated I have been with the number of signs and some of them seemingly redundant or unnecessary. And wouldn't you know, there is a sign in Cambridge right now that is literally unnecessary, if not flat out inaccurate at this point. And here to help us understand better why you should avoid this sign at all costs and maybe the region should remove it, is the owner of Southworks Antiques. Doug Harding joins me in studio. Good morning, Doug.
Morning.
This is a sign that points people to a factory outlet district in Cambridge that really doesn't even exist anymore?
No, it's been closed now for 8 years.
Okay, so for 8 years, this sign has been pointing people to something that doesn't even exist anymore. What happened here?
I think it's just a case of where the region didn't pay any attention to removing signs that are no longer relevant. And I don't know who's really responsible for that, but there's a number of signs that point in different directions that businesses are no longer there in the region. And it's something that we asked when we had moved 8 years ago if they could change some of the signs so that the arrows would point to our current location at Water Street. And nothing was done about it. And so it's been off and on for 8 years, making inquiries every once in a while. And we just recently got contacted and just kind of renewed our interest in getting these signs changed.
Well, so I'm glad you pointed that out because let's be clear, Southworks Antiques is still very much open and thriving on Water Street. It's a fantastic building and a fantastic store. I know many find it. And as you said, Doug, 8 years ago, you move from this factory outlet district in Cambridge, and it's not just for people in this region. This is a tourist draw, and people now may end up at what is the Gaslight District looking for Southworks Antiques and being a little confused.
Well, we do. We get many calls of people, hey, I'm at your location. I can't find where you are. And it's like, no, we've moved. And unfortunately, it's been taking some people 8 years to find out that we've moved. But mainly it's out of territory, out of the region. People are coming down. They remember us being there. They come down there. And then they don't know where to go. They know we're still in business, but they didn't know that we had moved to Water Street, and they were just following the signs. And we get calls. Could you give me directions?
So this is where it starts to get interesting and complicated, because it may be more than just the region that's involved on this because of the tourist aspect or the tourist destination here.
Yes. Well, part of it is well, they say that this is a tourism-oriented directional signs. And the trouble with that is definition of what is a tourism business. And in some areas regionally, antiques are recognized as a tourist-oriented business, but in other regions and provincially it's not. So on some of the major road direction signs, antiques aren't allowed, antique businesses aren't allowed on those signs. So we should rely on the region to put up the directional signs if it so is in their mandate for tourism-oriented businesses.
So when you talk about antiques stores not being allowed on those tourism-related signs, those would be the signs we see along the 401, for example?
Yes.
Okay. So who ultimately is responsible for this sign and making the necessary correction?
On the regional road?
Yeah, this one that we see that points to the factory outlet.
That would be up to the region.
That would be up to the region.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what role does the province and maybe our Ministry of Tourism play in any of this?
Well, there are specific guidelines where signs can be placed on the roadways, which is the responsibility of the Ministry of Transportation. But I get lost in this too to find out who's responsible to put up the signs and what kind of signs can actually be put up. I was just going down Highway 24 last night and intentionally looking at these signs, and it gets somewhat confusing. I'd like to see some more consistency when you look at a hospital sign. It's the same blue as white as some of the tourist signs, as well as the regional police sign directing to the police station. So I'd also like to see some changes made so that there's a little bit more definition between a tourist directional sign as opposed to, say, a hospital or a police station sign.
Are these tourist directional signs even governed or controlled through the province of Ontario, or is this a third-party organization that's involved?
A third-party organization responsible to be oversighted by the Ministry of Culture, Tourism and Sport.
All right, so we kind of farm it out, in other words.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's to a company in the States, no less.
Yes.
So there is some organization in the United States that is responsible for the signs that we see along the 401, Highway 24, and elsewhere.
Yes, for the province of Ontario, yes.
That's absolutely incredible to me. So 8 years on, Doug, what efforts have you made so far to have this sign corrected?
Well, when we moved 8 years ago, we requested that the signs be changed to show where we had moved to, and nothing was done about it. And every once in a while we'd make inquiries, and then we just kind of let it go until the Cambridge Times just decided to do an article on it, and it kind of spurred our interest again. And we got in contact with the TODS program to see what we can do about getting on the TODS program signs, and we're still waiting for their response. But in some jurisdictions, like Halton Region, antiques are recognized as a tourist destination, so are allowed in Halton Region anyways to go on signs where they're not in other regions.
So when you say TODS, that's the program Tourism Ontario Destination sign?
No, it's tourism-oriented directional signs.
Tourism-oriented directional sign.
Yes.
And if you are part of that program, then maybe a sign could go on Highway 24 or the 401?
The 401, and then it's up to the region to follow up for signs on regional roads.
Gotcha. Right. Okay, I gotcha. I don't feel as though, Doug, this should be the business owner's job to do here. Isn't somebody, maybe a counselor could help out, or somebody at the region?
Well, we've actually went to our member of provincial parliament. I've talked with the mayor and previous mayor about this issue, and nobody seems to be really concerned about getting involved. Not to the depth that I would like to see anyways. And certainly nothing's happened, as you can tell by the sign still being there.
I got a ratchet set at home, Doug. Maybe I could help out with this a little bit. I appreciate you coming in and talking about this today. And let's hope that we can get somebody to remove the sign that points to basically nowhere at this point. Keep up the good work at Southworks.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Doug Harding joins us. He is the owner of Southworks Antiques. Very much still in business. You'll find it on Water Street, right where it belongs. Great spot to visit. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Was it something by the Beach Boys or something else entirely? Your favorite album of all time, as we remember today, Brian Wilson, and our Flipside conversation is about music. What is number one on your all-time best albums chart? Let's find out coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio.
If everybody had an ocean across the USA, then everybody'd be served like California. You'd see them wearing their baggies, Warachi sandals too, a bushy blonde hairdo, serving USA.
Early on, definitely one of my favorites from the Beach Boys. Love me some Surfin' USA. And quick story about that, if you'll indulge me. Because as a young lad growing up in this town, I was always interested in and fascinated by radio. I listened to it all the time. So picture me in my early to mid-teens becoming a big fan of the quote-unquote oldies at the time, Beach Boys included. And a name and voice that you know well in this community, Dave Schneider, was a DJ on my local radio station. And I called him one day to ask him the question, and maybe some other time we'll do this on the flip side about misheard lyrics. I didn't mishear the lyrics, but I was curious what the Beach Boys were singing, or if you could take it both ways, if you will. If everybody had an ocean across the USA, the ocean, the body of water to surf on, or if everybody had a notion, the idea across the USA, then they'd all go out and surf, right? It works both ways, doesn't it? I called Dave Schneider, the radio DJ, to ask him that question. And being the great human being that he is, he answered the phone and chuckled away with me. We had a good little chat about it. Dave Schneider, that radio DJ, and 14 or 15-year-old me back in the day. Anyway, we're playing some Beach Boys music today, of course, because we lost a musical genius in Brian Wilson yesterday, who passed away at the age of 82. So in keeping with the theme, remember that Pet Sounds, the Beach Boys album, arguably one of the greatest albums ever recorded in music history. So we thought on the flip side today, we'll just put out the easy question. I'm sure you've got an answer to it. What is the best album of all time? In other words, your very favorite, the one that you can listen to again and again and again and again. Your favorite album or the best album of all time is 519-570-2545. Star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Let's get right to the phones. George, good morning.
Yes, Mike, good morning. Definitely a great album, Pet Sounds, definitely. But there's two I could listen to every day.
Okay.
And that is Breakfast in America.
Excellent. Supertramp.
And also Exit Stage Left. I mean, these two albums, you can't go wrong listening to it, and I love listening to that music.
But what if you had to pick just one, George?
Because it depends how I'm feeling. If I'm feeling a little bit more mellow, whatever I want, definitely Breakfast in America. But if I want some good, technical, great music, definitely, I think I can't answer that.
All right. That's fair. That's fair. George, appreciate it. Thanks very much for the call. Exit Stage Left, a live album by Rush, and I can see the album cover now, woman standing behind the curtain, stage left, just peering out. And then Breakfast in America. You want to talk about great album covers. How about the waitress in the yellow dress holding up the tray in front of the New York skyline? I'm pretty sure it's New York. Anyway, Breakfast in America by Supertramp. Exit Stage Left from Rush for George. What about Mark? Oh, wait, let me guess, Mark. Alice Cooper?
You're kind of wrong, Mike.
Oh, okay. You know, I'm only kind of wrong. You're a nice guy.
He's got a lot of albums out there, but hands down, my favorite all time, the Beatles' Abbey Road.
Abbey Road by the Beatles. Number 5 on Rolling Stone's list of the 500 best albums of all time. Abbey Road.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mark. Great call. And again, you want to talk about classic album covers. I almost got hit by a bus posing. Okay, I didn't. I like to make the story sound a little bit better than it actually was, but there was a bus coming down the road. But when my beloved and I visited London many years ago, we, of course, went to Abbey Road and Abbey Road Studios, and there's the famous crosswalk. And you bet your bottom dollar I stopped in the middle of the road and said, come on, take my picture. Take it now. And there were so many people doing this that you kind of had to wait so you could get your picture. And the bus was coming down the road. It wasn't really close. I had lots of time. And now I've got a picture of me walking across Abbey Road. That's Mark's favorite album of all time. What about you, Grant? What's your favorite album of all time?
It's an original Prism with Ron Tayback. He has an amazing voice, and it's Young and Restless. That was the name of the
Young and Restless by Prism, eh?
That's the album.
All right.
Name.
All right, Grant. Listen, a little bit of Canadian content, more Canadian content in there. We'll take it. Jeff, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Favorite album?
Bryan Adams. What's that?
Sorry, I interrupted you. Bryan Adams.
Bryan Adams has many great albums, and I'm a Bryan Adams avid fan, but it has to be Waking Up the Neighbors.
Really? That was his.
Yes.
Was that his first one with Mutt Lange?
That I don't know.
Okay.
Was it his second or third album? But he hasn't toured it since I was a boy.
Yeah.
And I wish he did. And I even reached out on social media a number of years ago, and I said if he toured the Waking Up the Neighbors, that I would go vegan for a year.
Wait, what?
And
Jeff, don't do it. Don't do it, man.
Well, Brian is vegan, and I got no response.
Interesting. So better than Reckless, better than It Was Cuts Like a Knife, right? Was the album that the song came from, I think? Yeah.
Waking Up the Neighbors is just a full body experience. It has a bit of everything.
Yeah, I hear you. Great album. I remember it well. Thanks, Jeff.
Awesome. Take care.
You as well. I think it was the first, because if I'm remembering my Bryan Adams discography correctly here, like obviously with Reckless and others, but he had kind of softened a little bit through the late 80s, and Waking Up the Neighbors was kind of his return to a little bit more of that rock and roll. And as Jeff said, it was a full-throated, in-your-face. I think it was the first one that Bryan Adams did with Mutt Lange, I think. Anyway, great choice. Tony, what about you? Favorite album or best album of all time?
Well, I am a metalhead at heart. And Metallica, Ride the Lightning is one of my favorites of all time.
That's a good one.
But number one has got to be Supertramp, Crime of the Century.
No kidding. So that's 2 for Supertramp already. Breakfast in America before and Crime of the Century, eh?
Yeah, it's an album that I would never get sick of. Both sides, song 1 to side 9, it's just pure magic.
Interesting. Interesting. Great choice. I mean, I can't argue it, but even as a metalhead, that would be a little mellow for you then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I have to be in the mood to put it on.
Sure. Yeah.
But when I do put it on, I thoroughly enjoy it from the beginning right to the end.
I love it. That's what a good album should do. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Appreciate the call. We are celebrating the best albums of all time on the Flipside this morning because we lost Brian Wilson yesterday at the age of 82, one of the founders of the Beach Boys. I mentioned earlier when Mark called and said Abbey Road by the Beatles, his favorite album of all time, according to Rolling Stone magazine, and its top 500 albums of all time. Abbey Road comes in at number 5. Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life at number 4. Joni Mitchell's Blue at number 3. There's Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys in at number 2. Who's going to hear this bleep, Mike Love? Asked Brian Wilson in 1966 when he was playing him the songs that he was working on, all of these different instruments, all of these different ways of arranging the instruments. Who's going to hear this bleep? The ears of a dog? And of course, that became Pet Sounds, and that's one of the reasons that it got the title that it did, Pet Sounds. Second best album of all time, according to Rolling Stone, and the best album, number 1 on Rolling Stone's top 500 albums of all time, Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. What is your best and or favorite album of all time? That's the question we're asking you on the Flipside this morning. Sam, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. I would go with the Joshua Tree, U2.
Oh, boy, there's you know what? Another excellent choice. Well done.
Thank you. And while I'm on the phone with you, can I make a request for Where the Streets Have No Name for Friday?
Absolutely. We'll mark it down for you, Sam. You got it.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Arguably, again, I've brought this up before, it's difficult to argue Where the Streets Have No Name. Oh, wait, or is it? No, it's still what I haven't found what I'm looking for. Isn't that? And I got to remember, best opening track to an album of all time. I've argued this before. Where the Streets Have No Name is the first song on the album. I mean, the long, slow build up into Streets Have No Name. Best opening track to any album ever. We'll get it played for Sam tomorrow on our All Request Friday. But right now, on the Flipside, which we do every Thursday morning at this time, we are asking you your favorite or the best album of all time. Pet Sounds, many say, belongs in the conversation. We lost Brian Wilson yesterday. We remember him and the music we love on the Flipside today. Tell us your favorite album of all time. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We lost Brian Wilson yesterday. We remember him on the show today by playing the music of the Beach Boys. And because Pet Sounds often gets ranked among the best albums of all time, our question for you on the Flipside today, what is the best album of all time? Or your favorite, of course. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Our buddy Dean sends an email to Mike at 570news.com. Abbey Road by the Beatles. Got to be one of the greatest albums, echoing what Mark said earlier. Let's find out what Glenn has to say. Good morning, Glenn.
Hi, good morning, Mike. I hope you can hear me okay.
I can.
I saw the Beach Boys with my parents at the CNE in 1975 in the afternoon.
A matinee concert at the CNE, the Beach Boys.
Yes, and then a couple of years ago, I saw Brian Wilson at one of the best venues in the world, the Center in the Square, and he was a bit fragile.
Yes. The years, I mean, Tom Petty famously said, getting old is the price we pay for not dying.
Very good. And my top album, Canadian content, would have to be, of course, Neil Young Harvest, and also also overall, Led Zeppelin number 4.
Oh, yes. I love it. You and I could get along very well just, playing some albums together, I think.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate that. Some great choices there. Zeppelin's 4, Neil Young. I mean, I'm a Rush guy first and foremost. You know that. And I used to put Signals ahead of Moving Pictures as my favorite Rush album. I'm kind of coming back on that. Moving Pictures is Moving Pictures. But then, and of course, 2112. I could go on and on. But Neil Young has his place as well. Speaking of people that have their place, producer Paulie on the phone with me today. Paulie, where you been all my life?
Very funny. How you doing, Farwell?
I'm doing great, my friend. How are you?
Good. So I heard you talking about the greatest albums of all time, and I was prompted to call in here. Now, you're going to make fun of me. I know you are.
I usually do.
And the album I have in mind is guaranteed not on that Rolling Stone 500 list.
Okay.
But for anybody of my vintage, I'm 46, it begins and ends with the first Bare Naked Ladies successful album, Gordon. Gordon by the Bare Naked Ladies. There is not a bad song on that album. It's solid.
Now, I confess, Paulie, to not having read all 500 on the Rolling Stone list today. But you know what? And you're probably right. Gordon might not have made it, but that's not a bad pick. And how about we just talk about the song Brian Wilson by the Bare Naked Ladies?
Oh, you know what? I never even made that connection until right now. Maybe that was my subconscious telling me to call in, because I'm pretty sure that song is on that album.
There you go. Excellent choice. Listen, while you're here, because I know, like you love radio like me loves radio,
Yeah.
and I was telling the story of calling Dave Schneider at the beginning of all of this when he was on. It would have been 570 chime back in the day.
Yeah.
Anyway, how about Paulie, though? Here we are on our talk radio station, and people are still calling in their requests for All Request Friday. It just doesn't change on radio.
Some things never change.
They certainly don't. Great to hear your voice, my friend. Stay well.
Thanks, Farwell. Talk to you later.
All right, producer Paulie, our good friend and former colleague. I'm going to start a hashtag on social media or something like that, Free Paulie or some such thing. Anyway, he says the Bare Naked Ladies and Gordon, best album ever. What about John? John, what do you think? Best album?
Hey, Mike, hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm out and about on a walk.
Yeah, you're doing well. I'm coming through nicely.
Yeah, well, can't go wrong with Rush, but I would have to say a similar feeling to one of your other listeners. It depends on the mood. So for me, if I'm camping, definitely anything by the hip, probably fully completely. If I'm in the garage, having a couple of beers, probably 1984 by Van Halen.
Excellent choices. And I love what you said about depending on the mood, right? Like I used to almost every Sunday throw on some James Taylor because James Taylor just said Sunday mornings to me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And also if I'm barbecuing, pretty much anything by Max Webster.
Very good choice as well. And then, as soon as you also said when you're camping, I thought it's got to be the Tragically Hip, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's our camping band.
Absolutely. John, thanks for the call. Great to hear from you today. And another series of great albums because it depends on the mood that you're in. Fully Completely really resonates with me by the hip because there was a time, inspired by another music-loving friend of mine, that I ranked all 600 plus of the albums that I owned in order to create my own definitive top 10 list. And yes, within that top 10 was Fully Completely by the Tragically Hip. Van Halen's 1984 was also in there that John said he could listen to in the garage. I'll get to my number one in a moment. It might surprise you. Mike, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. When I was a young kid, my older brother was a teenager, and he bought two albums, which I loved. One was Crime of the Century, Supertramp.
That's a second vote for that one, yeah.
The other one, which I hope you know it, but Armageddon album by Prism. Do you remember the group Prism?
I remember the group Prism, but I can't say I was a huge fan.
Well, the song Virginia was amazing. Anyway, since you mentioned Dave Snyder, can I give him a credit for something he did on the show way back then?
Absolutely, you can.
So he did these songs that he made up, and he inserted answers. He did an interview, but he used lyrics from songs to answer. There was the Constitution song.
Yep.
He asked these questions and played a clip of songs. He did a whole bunch of them, and you can't find them anymore. But they were the best.
You know what, Mike? Preach. I remember listening to that too. In fact, I did in high school. I made a little thank you to one of our teachers at the end of the school year by using that. We ask a question, use a song lyric as the answer. I stole it from Dave Schneider.
He's an awesome guy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Great memory. Oh, we could go on and on about the history of radio and some of the great people that we've had doing it here in the community. Sean, good morning.
Hey, Mike. It's Sean O'Brien here. Good to talk to you.
Hey, good to talk to you. And a musician must have a favorite album of all time. You can't say it's one by Fire Train, though. Come on.
No. But I agree. It's about your mood, but also it's almost like picking your favorite kid at times. It's hard to decide. But for me, it's the Who. Who's Next?
Ooh, good one.
And the reason I'm calling, I have to say that Baba O'Reilly knocks out Streets Have No Name as an opening track.
Okay. You know what? I'm hearing you. I get it. Yep. I like it.
So Streets Have No Name, definitely in the top, but I got to go with Baba O'Reilly. Keep up the great work, buddy.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate it. If you don't know Baba O'Reilly, Teenage Wasteland, it all comes together, and we sometimes get the name mixed up, but that's an excellent, excellent suggestion as another lead track to an album. I said earlier, U2's Joshua Tree. Does it have the best opening track ever with The Streets Have No Name? That top 10 list I used to have of my favorite albums. Of course, Rush was on there, but I said earlier, I actually put Signals ahead of Moving Pictures. I'd probably revisit that now. Springsteen's Born to Run was in there. Back in Black, AC/DC was in there. But my number one album, my favorite one after I ranked them all from my own collection, was Billy Joel's The Stranger. Go figure for a rock and roll nut like me. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. How many of those songs about cars from back in the day? Your little Deuce Coupe, how about 409, another one from the Beach Boys? You'll hear more Beach Boys music in our final hour together where the mic is flipped over to you for the full 60 minutes. Talkback coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
There is so much, actually, to talk about. So we do want you to talk back during this hour, open phone lines, so you make the call and we listen. And it's a great day to remind you that the things that you talk about on this show, the frustrations that you express, are being heard by the people whose job it is to help you be less frustrated. Because we got some movement on Lob Singer Line, a little Farwell Show bump this week when it comes to speed cameras. But I'll remind you first of the numbers to get in touch with us here on the show. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. On the lighter side of things, maybe you're feeling anxious ahead of tonight's hockey game. I mean, if the Edmonton Oilers lose, is there any chance that the Stanley Cup comes back to Canada? I don't know. Those Florida Panthers look pretty overwhelming right now. They look very much the part of the defending Stanley Cup champions. And connected to that game, how about the first game of the next season for the Kitchener Rangers? Just announced about an hour ago. Yes, I use the royal we in this regard. Open the season on Friday, September the 19th, and the Brantford Bulldogs will pay their one and only visit to the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. Regular season visit, that is. What? I mean, why not start the OHL season with a preview of the OHL final? Kitchener, Brantford, could you imagine? Some have suggested the season hasn't even started, but those are two good teams. And the Brantford Bulldogs and former Rangers head coach Jay McKee, who just signed a 3-year contract extension in Brantford, will be in Kitchener to take on your Rangers on Friday, September the 19th. That is the home and season opener for your Kitchener Rangers for the season ahead. Full schedule gets released on Monday, by the way. Back to Lobsinger Line, and we talked about it earlier on the show. Derek follows up with an email to Mike at 570news.com. Yes, indeed, the speed camera is gone. So are the 40 kilometer per hour signs. So it's 60 where it was 40. But the speed camera coming soon sign is still there. And in the last stretch before King, just before where Hemlock Barn was, it goes back up to 80. I thought it was 60 down that stretch, so they might have changed that too. But we talked about this on the show. We expressed our frustration with the way Lobsinger Line was being controlled, speed controlled through our speed camera program. We said it just doesn't make any sense. Go out there, check it out for yourself. Somebody must have, because the 40 zone is gone. It's a 60 zone. And I'm not surprised that the speed camera is gone for now and there's a coming soon, because they're going to have to recalibrate that sucker and turn it back up to 60 or whatever it is, as opposed to 40. Connected to that, I wanted to let you know that a report coming to the City of Kitchener's Community and Infrastructure Services Committee next Monday, the 16th, will recommend that the City of Kitchener continue to postpone installation of speed cameras on City of Kitchener streets, regardless of how the region decides to deliver the service, because Kitchener pushed back on this a while ago, says it would like to explore running its own speed camera program. It doesn't want to be a part of this regional initiative. And the latest report to come to a committee at the City of Kitchener recommends keeping it this way. Continue to postpone the installation of speed cameras on City of Kitchener streets, because there's been significant pushback against it. And even the province is saying we might be moving too fast or in an inappropriate direction. So things are happening on that front as well. And of course, we have the Canada Post news today, which prompted this from my buddy Tony, who sends an email to Mike at 570news.com. It's time for Canada Post to declare bankruptcy and restructure. There are more efficient ways to provide these services. Tony's absolutely right. Heads out of sand, please, Canada Post. Let's just acknowledge it's 2025, okay? It's not 1965 anymore. Let's figure out the new business model. As I said, lots of things to talk about. Let's start with Preston Paul. Not Paul from Preston, but Preston Paul. Afternoon, Paul.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good.
I've been sitting around here for the last hour trying to figure out which darn album I think is the best. And I'm telling you, I'm 64, and I come from the classic rock days. Give me anything from Zeppelin except their last album, In Through the Outdoor. It wasn't one of my favorites, that's for sure.
All right.
But a lot of your guests and callers had some great choices. Crime of the Century, Supertramp. They were all good choices. I could live with those two.
But Zeppelin, hard to go wrong there, my friend.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Good to hear from you.
Thanks, Mike.
You too. Preston Paul, not to be confused with Paul from Preston. Two different Pauls, both from Preston. Is it a prerequisite, whilst living in Preston, to have the first name Paul? I don't know that's the case, but I love hearing from Preston Paul. He actually found his way here from another radio station when that radio station that he used to listen to changed things up, changed their announcers. He wasn't pleased with the change, and he found us, and we are so happy to have him. That just kind of ties into all of those radio memories we were sharing in the last hour as well. And, you know, I'm looking out my window here in the studio. I see the sun coming in. Yesterday afternoon, I did do as I said I was and went home and listened to the album Pet Sounds. And then I just let my smart speaker take over from there. And it did a great job of keeping in the Beach Boys vein with some more Beach Boys, a little bit of this, a little bit of Beatles, a little bit of that. And it was a very enjoyable afternoon. Maybe, just maybe, this afternoon's beckoning, thanks to all of your suggestions on best albums. And we'll go home and enjoy some music on the deck. Talk radio is where we're at right now, though. And we want to hear from you on the Talkback Hour. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
What good is the dawn that grows into day?
It is our daily Talkback Hour, where we open the phone lines to hear directly from you on the issues of the day or something else that you want to turn into an issue. We're happy to hear from you on Talkback. Bill sends an email to Mike at 570news.com, and I can't help but think maybe we can get a Farwell Show bump in this regard as well, because we pleaded for some common sense on Lobsinger Line when it came to the speed cameras and how they were rolled out in the 40 kilometer per hour zone, which just didn't seem to make sense. It really defied logic. Bill writes via email, "We winter in Sebring, Florida, and the municipal streets on either side of our seniors community have elementary schools with 25 mile per hour, 40 kilometer per hour limits. There's a flashing amber light on the top of the posts that the school safety signs are mounted on. They only flash during restricted speed times. I quite often go left to Baden or right to New Hamburg from the Steinman Church corner. I know where you are, Bill. I know that corner. If you have your mind on something, it's easy to go over the 40 kilometer per hour speed limit. A blinking light would go a long way to warning drivers of the school safety zone. I have not been ticketed." Good for you, Bill, and thanks again for that suggestion. You know, if you travel Highway 8 out of Cambridge, okay, and you take it towards Flamborough, Dundas, etc., you will see, you're in the next municipality over from the region of Waterloo, and they have that very thing, the flashing amber light on the sign warning you of the restricted speed limit and the community safety zone. Why can't we do that? Like, surely we've heard of this in the region, right? We can do this, Waterloo region. We really can. Let's go back to the phones. George, good afternoon.
Yeah, Mike, I have a correction to make. I feel so dumb. I think true Rush fans are not going to forgive me for this one.
What happened? What'd you do wrong?
It said exit stage left. I got confused. I meant to say moving pictures.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Exit Stage Left. It was a good live album.
Yes, but then I realized afterwards, no, because they came out so close in time.
Yep.
I always get those two mixed up a little bit. But it was moving pictures.
All right, George, you're allowed to make mistakes. And look at you. You're accountable. You follow the principles of this show.
Exactly.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it. That's another great, now I'm going to get into the whole album cover thing, because when George called earlier and said Exit Stage Left was his favorite Rush album, I just thought of the album cover, the woman in the wings on a stage kind of peering out, stage left, moving pictures, literally moving pictures outside Queen's Park. Right there. I mean, good old Canadian band, those boys from Toronto. And there it was, Queen's Park, our provincial legislature where the pictures were being moved in front of. 519-570-2545, star 570 and 1-800-570-5715 if you want to participate in the Talkback Hour. Speaking of defying common sense, and I really hope we can, at minimum, because I think this would be appropriate with our speed camera program. I think our speed camera program should be certain hours of the day when the danger is highest. And I think our speed camera program should also include the flashing amber lights. It's not hard to do. Other municipalities do it. We should do it too, to draw more attention to the zone that you're in, but also make it a zone that applies at appropriate times of the day. You do not need a school zone speed limit on July the 11th. Simple as that. The other bit of common sense I think we need to apply here, and I hope that our conversation with Doug Harding of Southworks Antiques earlier today reached the appropriate ears at some office at some desk at regional headquarters on Frederick Street in Kitchener. Because for 8 years now, 8 years, Southworks Antiques used to be a part of the Southworks Outlet Mall in the Galt area of Cambridge. But they moved 8 years ago to their current building on Water Street. And still, 8 years later, there are directional signs that the region is responsible for, pointing people to the old Southworks Outlet Mall, which no longer exists. If you follow those signs now, you end up at the Gaslight District, which is a lovely district, and you're probably happy to be there and see the beautiful area, but then you're wondering, where's Southworks Antiques? It's still very much open on Water Street, but you're making the phone call saying, well, where'd you go? Why did the signs point me here? And I want to know, truly, why it takes 8 years and counting to remove a sign that no longer points you where it says you are being pointed. Talk about way too many signs on our roadways. We could at least get rid of one, region of Waterloo. Talkback continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
I keep looking for a place to fit in where I can speak my mind. And I've been trying hard to find the people that I won't leave behind. They say I got brains, but they ain't doing me no good.
I think it's worth pointing out, as it ties into a theme that seems to come up often on the show. City of Vaughan is pausing handing out tickets to people issued said tickets by speed cameras in the city. The overwhelming number of speed tickets has the City of Vaughan saying, you know what? We're going to just press pause on this idea of handing out fines issued by automated speed cameras. Funny how this is all working out, isn't it? Back to the phones on Talkback. Greg, good afternoon. Greg, did you butt dial me?
Oh, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me? You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, it was just a bit of a dead zone because it's not the greatest cell phone in the truck here, but when robots were delivering food, right?
Sorry, you cut out there for a second. Robots delivering food?
Yeah, you mentioned Vaughan. That was also where these robots are delivering food now, right?
No, it's Markham.
Markham. Oh, okay. I knew somewhere on there. Okay, but anyway, no, the other day when you thought, okay, am I worried about it because they might take my job someday? I'm thinking, okay, if a robot can collect orders all morning, go out, make sure somebody over 18 is home before they hand off medication, I'll gladly give them my job. So I'm not too worried right now.
You are indispensable and irreplaceable, Greg.
Basically, yes, at least by a robot. So, and then I missed the Flipside this morning. Was it simply your favorite album of all time?
It was.
Okay, well, I got a tie. Boston's first and Don't Look Back.
Boston's self-titled debut also made my top 10 back in the day. But you got to, I mean, but what if you had to pick just one, Greg?
It's tough. Everyone says the first one's better, but I don't know. I'd have to have a beer first and then see. But I don't like putting any, no, it's really that tough. It's just that much of a tie. Oh, and there's tons of other great albums too. Well, I can go on and on and on, but no, Boston's my favorite, and those first.
All right, Greg, you're starting to break up again, but appreciate the call. And another excellent suggestion. Speaking of the robots and taking over, have you seen the automated lawnmower, the robotic lawnmower in the city of Waterloo? One of the Ontario municipalities that's making use of it goes out, cuts for a couple hours, comes back in for a 1 hour charge, gets back out there and cuts for another couple hours, just like somebody on union wages. What? That's a joke. It's just a joke. But there's another task that is being offloaded to the machines. I remember going to visit a friend I hadn't seen in forever last summer, and they're doing all right. They are. As I pulled up to their mansion, essentially, there was it looked like one of those Roombas, the little in-the-house vacuum cleaners, except it was going around the grass outside. I went to the door. I'm like, do you have a robot cutting your grass right now? Yes, they do. Listen, it's not my favorite thing in the world to do, but I am not giving it up to a robot. City of Waterloo, though, has a robot in its lawn mowing fleet. The machines are taking over. This is the Mike Farwell Show. I'm a real person. Call us on Talkback, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
When I grow up to be a man, will I dig the same things that turned me on as a kid? Will I look back and say that I wish I hadn't done what I did? Will I joke around, still joke around, and still take those signs, still take the signs? Will I grow up to be a man?
It is your daily Talkback Hour where you make the call, we answer and listen to the concern that's on your mind or the response to a topic we discussed on the show today. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Mayor Jake, good afternoon.
Mike, how are you now?
I'm good, and you?
Not so bad. Well, let's talk about speed cameras.
Let's do it.
So, a couple of things about the speed cameras that I don't like. The one that they want to put out in front of Fisher Home and in front of the high school there. I went to Turner Fenton Secondary School in Brampton on a 70 road on Steeles. No, they did enforcement once in a while with the police, but they didn't put any cameras there. They didn't slow it down. And they've already spent money on putting these ridiculous signs, speed between this time and this time, or this, and this and this. So you're going to put cameras on a 2-lane road, probably one of the busiest roads in the city, in front of a high school? Come on with your coming on. And if somebody can explain to me why Shirley Ave is a 50-kilometer zone, and it's a non-residential area, when I'm elected, I'm going to get rid of the 50s. I'm going to turn it into either a 60 or a 70 and bring back common sense.
Mayor Jake, I got one question for you, Your Worship. Just one, okay?
Yes, sir.
You went to that school, you said, in Brampton on Steeles Avenue, speed limit 70. How did you ever survive? I mean, come on.
Because we weren't stupid. We didn't just walk out into traffic. We were high school students. We were old enough to know better.
Bingo. Nailed it.
There we go.
Mayor Jake, I'm voting for you.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. Great to hear from you today. Excellent use of come on with your coming on. If I may, it's as though Mayor Jake read my mind, because I have to share this with you. And don't ever tell me again that our computers and other electronic devices are not listening to us. Don't tell me that. And that just extends this whole idea of giving over control to robots. Okay? Seriously. You think that lawnmower isn't listening to the kids in the playground, Waterloo? It's collecting all kinds of data. I know that's a bit conspiratorial, but the machines are listening, because we were just talking about the machines, all the things that we're giving over to autonomous technology. And what comes up on my computer during that news update with Matt Hutchison, but a story about autonomous vehicles and how in London, not Ontario, but in the UK, they are on a big push to get more autonomous vehicles onto their roadways by 2035. Does that sound familiar? Like electric vehicle mandate here in Canada by 2035? But this particular columnist, so recognize it's an opinion, but he says the car made pedestrians second-class citizens. Don't let driverless vehicles push us, pedestrians, off the road altogether. And I quote from his column, "If we want driverless technology to succeed, it must be made to serve society, not the other way around. That means recognizing that unpredictability is not a bug in the system, but part of what makes cities human. And it means resisting any attempt to reframe basic human behavior, like crossing the street, as a problem in need of control." Hang on a second here. Crossing the street in and of itself is not a problem. Crossing the street unpredictably in a willy-nilly, I'll do it wherever I want to do it manner is a problem. Yes, cities are full of humans, but as humans, we engage in a social contract, don't we? that we will adhere to certain rules that keep things in line and keep us all safe. Driverless vehicles, this columnist says, may still help us solve real transport problems. But if they come at the cost of our freedom to walk across the street, then we're solving the wrong ones. No. You're still free to walk across the street, but you must do so in a safe manner. How is this difficult? I think it is an attitude like this that gets us into trouble. Let me share a recent example from one of my travels on the road. This was actually last week. I was coming back from the University of Waterloo's President's Golf Tournament out at Westmount last Monday evening. And I pull out onto Glasgow, and I'm driving down Glasgow towards Westmount Road. So I'm coming back from Glasgow and Fisher Holm and all the way down. I'm almost at Glasgow and Westmount. And as I get to Westmount, the vehicle in front of me is turning right. I have a green, but the vehicle in front of me is turning right. So I slow down, make sure I leave plenty of space, let this vehicle turn right, and I will continue along my way. And then, I kid you not one word of a lie, like a flash, out of nowhere comes this jackwagon, a spandex warrior on a bicycle, and he flew past me so fast. Like it was a flash out of the corner of my eye, comes flying by me on the right, presumably. That's where he was riding the whole time. Maybe when I turned onto Glasgow, I should have checked for that. He would have been way behind by the time I turned on or whatever. And there's a bike lane there anyway. But not only did he fly past me on the right, then he zipped in front of me, between me and the car ahead that was making a right-hand turn. Because, of course, if he kept going right, he would have hit the side of that vehicle making its right-hand turn. How is that in any way acceptable behavior on the road? And so I continue driving down Glasgow Street, which has a speed limit, as you know, of 40 kilometers per hour. And I did not gain 1 kilometer per hour on the person on the bicycle. That's fine. If you want to ride 40, that's the limit. Ride 40. But then I watched this spandex warrior get to Glasgow and Belmont, and what happens there? Same ding-dang thing that happened back at Glasgow and Westmount. And that is, there's a vehicle that wants to turn left, and this guy flew into the intersection and swerved around the vehicle waiting to make its left turn. What I would like to know, the data that every time we create another, we need more safe cycling infrastructure. We need these bollards here and these medians there. Every time we do this, I want to see the data of the collisions that have occurred between perhaps pedestrians or people riding bicycles and people driving vehicles and find out what happened there and who was the one that broke the rules under the Highway Traffic Act. Because, listen, you want to be a spandex warrior, fill your boots. But you're the one taking your life into your hands by riding that way. If you're a vehicle on the road, you don't pass a vehicle turning right. You wait your place in line. Like, what did I do? I didn't swing out to go around the vehicle in front of me turning right. This guy flew past me, then cut in between us. If I had been moving any faster, he's done. He's toast. He's a pancake. And whose fault would it have been? Sick and ding-dang tired of the spandex warriors that ride around like this and then, oh, yeah, we need this safe cycling infrastructure. We need to spend money on this traffic calming. Oh, we need to do this. All the money that we invest can't fix stupid. That's completely reckless behavior. I'm tired of it. And this kind of entitlement is the same problem. You are free to cross the street safely. Don't be unpredictable. This is the social contract we all sign in a community. Oh, I needed to get that off my chest. It's Talkback on the Mike Farwell Show. Spandex warriors, go find another place to ride like a reckless maniac. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. fun on the show today. Just think of how much money we would save. I'm not even joking. All this infrastructure, all of this spending to make roads safer for people who walk and people who ride bicycles, we can do that ourselves. We got the greatest supercomputer on the planet between our ears. Use it. Honest to goodness. The problem is not the infrastructure. The problem is the person who misuses it. Glasgow is a beautiful street for riding a bike. If you ride it like the spandex warrior riding it last Monday, I'm sorry, but you deserve what you get. Like, come on with your coming on. Mayor Jake called earlier. He somehow, as a high school student, as a teenager with not yet fully formed frontal cortex, survived going to high school on a road that had a speed limit of 70 kilometers per hour. You know why? Because he used what was developed in his frontal cortex wisely. It's not rocket science here. Oh, my goodness gracious. All right, back to the phones. Bob, good
Hey, Mike.
afternoon. Hi, Bob.
How are you doing, sir?
Oh, my blood pressure is up right now, Robert.
Well, like one of your co-hosts used to say, go home and have a green tea, Mike.
What co-host was that? I have never had a co-host on this show.
Yeah, you did.
No.
No, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I thought you and brain cramp here.
All right, Bob, you uncramp it. Although producer Paulie called earlier, I guess, you know what? He was more than just a producer. He was like a co-host on this show. Maybe that's who Bob was thinking about. Greg, good afternoon.
Yeah, same Greg again. Just a few more thoughts.
Okay, same Greg.
Well, one of them that, given that what you just rambled on about, it's like, okay, do you know the stretch of...
Did I really ramble? I'm sorry.
No, I'm
Okay.
good with it. So I can add to it. I wasn't even thinking this topic. But can you picture, probably if you've biked out there, Hessenstrasse between Kressler and...
Oh, yeah, no, the Spandex Warriors love getting out there on the weekends and treating it like the Tour de France.
Yeah.
I
and
know.
Apparently they don't know what single file means if there's more than three of them.
It's because they ride it like the Tour de France. I know, Greg, I know.
And there was some kind of, I don't know, marathoner going on the other day, coming up Benjamin and whatever, and there was like about 15 at a time, and like still on there. Then they're taking up the whole lane, and there's dips and bends. All of a sudden, whoa, house and buggy. You know, so anyways, they might want to learn what single file means, but okay, that was just not on. Second, I forgot to request for a song tomorrow. Let's play Don't Look Back if you got time for it.
We can do that.
Okay. And here's something that if you haven't heard of already, might be some homework for you in the whole say of roads. Have you been on University near Woolwich, like up from Pillars lately?
Yeah, actually, I was just there the other night.
What is the point of what they did to that traffic light where they, after the left turn advanced is done, they only let one of the two lanes go straight, pause the other, then stop the one. Like, it's alternating straight. I've never heard of this, and I can't grasp what they're trying to accomplish there.
I believe that is for people who might be crossing the road. So when you have the green, if you're going to start turning right, I believe it's to allow different times for pedestrians.
Well, it's just like any other. Like, there's nothing really unique about the building of that intersection. Like, I don't know. I just never seen that before, and then
I'll investigate.
Okay.
I'll investigate further.
Yeah, I just can't fathom, like, really what's the advantage or what's the benefit of, because like I used to play last summer at Kiwanis Park, and as I was taking all the time, it was not there last year, so sometime in the past year they added it, and anyways, I'm going to leave it with you and see if you can find the mentality behind that one, because I've never seen that before, and really don't get why, if you're going straight, you're sitting there and just putting in time till the other way.
Till it's your turn. All right.
The left turns are done. You know,
Sounds
that's the
good.
thing, so.
I'll look into it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Greg, thanks for the call. I love the observations. Why is this intersection working this way? Susan sends an email to Mike at 570news.com. I'm so on board with what you just said about bicycles. I live on the corner of Allen and Caroline Streets. I see hundreds of infractions perpetrated by bicycle enthusiasts. They don't follow the rules, period. Forget bicycle enthusiasts. Spandex warrior from now on, Susan. It's Talkback on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Final minutes of our show today. Now You Know with Rob Snow. Coming up 1 until 3. Oh, the sounds of the Beach Boys as we remember Brian Wilson today. Back to the phones. Bob, good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. Sorry.
That's okay, Bob. Don't be sorry.
Okay, what I was going to say is, with reduced bicycle lanes, if there could be more people riding on the sidewalks, please say, and be polite, say on your left or on your right as you go past the person walking.
For sure. But, Bob, I'm telling you, this whole idea that it's ridiculously dangerous to be on the road on a bicycle is overstated. I'm sorry. It really is. Just use your head. You don't even need to be on the sidewalk. Just use your brain.
I know. I'm just saying for those that do.
Yeah, I get it. Sure. That would be a nice courtesy. Good call.
Have a good day, Mike.
You too, Bob. I appreciate it. Yeah, because when you're the bicycle on the sidewalk, then you are the dominant vehicle compared to the person walking, right? Francis, good afternoon.
Yes, I'll try to be fast. Here in Listowel, I watched a guy texting on his bike, pedaling down a grade of a hill, and there's cars all facing their houses, and the cars are within maybe a foot or two of the sidewalk, and he's texting. I could not believe it. I can't even drive with one hand on the handlebar.
Thank you, Francis. I appreciate the call. God bless is how Francis usually signs off. I actually, last year on my motorcycle trip, I think it was last year. Anyway, we were in the States. We hop on the interstate not long after leaving whatever hotel we were at, and we were booking it. We picked up with a couple of other guys on bikes, and they were booking it, and traffic was generally booking it, and I will not tell a lie. When I looked down at my speedometer, 140-ish, that was the flow. That's what traffic was doing. And of the other two guys that were also out there on their bikes with us, I saw one reach into his back pocket, take out his phone, and check it while riding 140 kilometers per hour on an interstate in the U.S. of A. So I brains, people. You have the greatest supercomputer on the planet between your ears. I promise you, no robot, no autonomous technology, no AI yet is that smart. Use the damn thing. That's a good note to leave us on today. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9. I hope you'll join me because I'd love more conversation. I'm Mike Farwell.